Well, welcome back for another episode of AmRev360, Conversations on the American Revolution from All Angles. I'm Scott Stevenson, President and CEO of the Museum of the American Revolution, and I'm coming to you from the museum at 3rd and Chestnut in Old City, Philadelphia. I'm actually sitting in the museum's Family Discovery Center, which is located in the lower level of the museum. We call this Revolution Place. It was produced with support from Family Search. And it's one of my favorite places to retreat here in the museum and feel immersed in the 18th century. So I'm joined today by my good friend and collaborator, Donna Lawrence of Donna Lawrence Productions in Louisville, Kentucky. Hello, Donna, and welcome. Nice to see you again.
Great to see you.
Yeah, it's been great. This is, of course, the week that we're celebrating our 4th anniversary. It's hard to believe, got to pinch myself, 4 years since opening to the public. And as we have, over the past week or so out on social media, we've been asking our fans to reflect on their experience at the museum. What do they remember about their visits? I would say at least half of the people, and these are hundreds and hundreds of people from around the country who have been to the museum, they talk about the Washington's War Tent experience as something that brought them to tears, made the hair on their back of their neck stand up, was a really lasting emotional experience for them. It certainly does that for me still, and I've seen that show hundreds of times already. And so I thought it would be really interesting to talk today with the mastermind behind that great experience. And so Donna, I just, it's great that you could join us from your home in down in Louisville. I think you were the first person who ever fed me a mint julep down there many years ago. And, you've been a real pioneer. I was actually sort of reflecting as we were getting set up to record this episode about some of the things that have changed about the museum going and museum experiences. The one element that's quite common today that really didn't exist then, or at least I have no memory of it, is the use of media and films as a storytelling device. And so you've been a real pioneer in this subject. And I'm curious, first of all, how many films, I don't want to put you on the spot if you haven't counted recently, but how many museum films have you actually produced?
You know what? I haven't counted either, but last time I counted, it was well over 100, different facilities, museums, from small local museums to, Museum of the American Revolution. And so quite a few.
Many of our viewers would have visited the National Constitution Center here in Philadelphia, which includes Freedom Rising, which is sort of a theater in the round with a live presenter. And it's one of the reasons I was so excited to work with you in thinking about how to present an object like George Washington's tent, which there's a danger of it, people just sort of shrugging their shoulders and say, oh, it's a tent. And so I just, one of the things I'm interested in hearing, generally speaking, we can talk specifically about our work together at the museum, but just when you first get those calls, and you start working with a client who wants to sort of tell a story, what is the DLP working process look like? And I'm sure it's different every time you do it, but there must be some well-honed, themes and techniques.
Yeah, for sure. And no matter what the subject is, I'd say the most important thing that we do, the thing we may spend the most time per tangible, obvious output, is listening and immersing ourselves in the subject. And we're always looking for the gurus of the subject. There are people, and this is one of the greatest treasures of this work, is that when we are working with any institution that's devoted to its subject, the people that we are able to sit with, to listen to ask questions and explore the subject matter with, are frequently people who have given their lives to understanding and knowing that subject. And when the subject is the product of a life's work, there's a level of knowing. I say, it's in your bones, and there's a level of knowing that we have the privilege of looking for, listening for, and always one way or another receiving. So that's the beginning is, you're looking for just the people who can be the conduit into the deepest level of knowing the story. Now, then the question is, what do you do with that? Because it's an enormous story. Maybe it's the American Revolution, it's the history of New York, it's the Constitution, it's the story of the oldest known ancient rock paintings in the lower Pecos Canyonlands in the Whitty Museum in San Antonio. It may be any one of those things. What do you now do with this incredible gift of the sort of insights that one has shared with you? And that's where it's the narrows. This is the narrows of the project. How do you take this vast story? What can you possibly do that's doing justice in 15 minutes? If, let's say, it's an orientation experience, you have a choice. You either go extremely high or extremely low. In 15
What
minutes,
does that mean?
In 15 minutes, you can share the topography from a very high altitude. I mean, how many times have you been in an airplane and you know your city and you know your countryside that you live nearby? You go up in that airplane and you just sense an understanding of it that you don't get down on the ground. And on the other hand, the other thing you can do in a short amount of time, that those sort of explosive opportunities, is if you can convey, or if you first discover and convey the roots, the drivers of the drivers of the drivers of the drivers of the story. And in the end, there are those 3 to 5 concepts or principles that if you understand this, you've got the antenna to be able to understand, and you have a way of relating to a vast amount of knowledge about that subject. So what we're looking for out of this initial period is finding that very high level of topography of storytelling that's yet full of insights, and then the fundamental roots of the story. And that gets us to be able to then begin work on what I call haiku. This is a haiku form. It's also, I've heard it called a poetic form, in that so few words, images, music, etc., must speak about so much, so that when a person leaves that environment, the walkthrough experience, the theater, whatever it is, they've been touched on a deep level and a very exciting sensory level with the truths of this story, in such a way that they will now walk through a museum and experience it differently. They'll be way more receptive. They'll be able to connect with it. They'll step outside. They'll walk in the city they've walked in their whole life, and they may feel it a different way. They will watch the evening news and they will hear the evening news in a different way. So that's, in a nutshell, that at the very highest level, very, highest altitude, an explanation of what we do, I think, or what we try to do.
The metaphor that's always struck me about this is the sort of, you tap the maple tree and collect the sugar water, and then you boil it down and you refine it and you refine it. And it's a long journey till the sugar at the end that's, beautiful and pure and so satisfying. And I'm curious, in your process, like when do you start to see pictures as opposed to words? When's the tipping point where it starts to be a landscape painting as opposed to a script?
I don't want to sound hokey. Okay, so it's so easy for that to happen, but I just have to say the truth. I don't look for those moments or opportunities, because that can't make it happen. That may prevent it from happening, but there's something about, depending on the subject matter, in a lot of cases, it's when you start touching it, when you're standing on the ground
Mhm.
walking the streets of Philadelphia at dawn or dusk
Mhm.
and just thinking about what you just heard the day before,
Mm.
and that sort of just, I don't know, really kind of a spiritual connection with the story, that sort of um and for me, um a lot of times the first manifestation is I hear music.
Mm.
I'll hear, you know, I'll just hear something, and it's in that music is in so many ways conveys, I think, is a channel for conveying or speaking about or exploring the soul of a subject.
Mm.
A lot of times it'll just it'll be in an almost an abstract way. It'll be
Mm.
you know, I want to start hearing, that string bass, or that, that low frequency, or the flute or something. It'll just be an abstract sound, and then frequently, and then pictures, but it's usually in the very beginning when you are when we are being ignited, our whole team. And when we say Donna Lawrence, it is such a team, and it's a team that's taken decades to actually, pull together over time. But it's all of us, and we start sensing these things early on, and that's a lot of times those things end up in the final piece,
Mm.
you know.
So I want to talk about tears for a moment, because I actually remember a time when we were installing the show before the museum opened, and kind of running it over and over and over again. And those who were peeking in, a lot of people were were physically tearing up and commenting on that. And some of your crew talked about how, oh yeah, Donna Lawrence, that's her specialty, is extracting tears from the audience, and not in making them sad, of course. And I can tell you, I am still, very often when I watch that film, feel that welling of emotion, which is amazing that you have that power over people. And I'm just curious if does that resonate with you? It must surely. This is not the first time you've heard those comments.
Our job is to get out of the way.
Hmm.
And I think that there are few people who could stand in some of these places and hear the stories that we're so privileged to hear from people who have the story in their bones,
Hmm.
and not feel moved to tears, or, hair standing up on the back of your neck or something.
Hmm.
And so I just think when we as human beings are deeply touched by things, it it moves us, and that comes out in all sorts of ways. And frequently it's tears, and it's tears of joy, it's tears of just deep feeling. It's just, we're overflowing. And I think that all we're really trying to do is to um, really kind of be a channel for that connection with a story, which is frequently about a people. It's inevitably in one way or another, and you feel that connection, and that's very moving. So our job is to get out of the way, so that what people are feeling in that moment in the tent theater, it's not really what we did, honestly.
Hmm.
It is creating an environment and sequence of words and maybe musical builds, and that allow you to feel, when that light finally goes up, this connection to what happened where that tent was.
Hmm.
That's what moves you, I believe.
When you think back on your 100+ works, are there some that really jump out at you as that you would, um, if I wanted to get a group together to go on a Donna Lawrence fan tour of your installations, are there some that sort of rise up that maybe are examples of different borders of the kind of work that you've done? The Great Range, or that you think have been particularly impactful?
Yeah, I could think about borders. It's hard to think about favorites, because they're, every one of them is such an incredible journey, really. Um, we most recently finished a project for the Hall of Fame, the Thoroughbred Racing Hall of Fame in Saratoga Springs. Completely different set of challenges and opportunities and everything from, say, the Museum of the American Revolution. And so that is one that I think it takes you into that world in a way that's maybe unexpected, and that you don't experience if you don't spend a lot of time with those horses, especially incredible creatures that they are. We are finishing right now a project for the National Museum of African American Music, which is, of course, just an incredible privilege and honor. And what we've discovered, it's just like so much of Black history. How did African music become African American music? It's just a very, very complex, rich, and I don't believe I've ever heard it told before. I mean, we're working, arm in arm with just, some excellent scholar musicians and curators that are part of the museum team, that are our guides, but that's, so you talk about music, you talk about sports, you talk about the American Revolution, ancient rock paintings in the lower Pecos Canyon lands. The interesting thing is that every single one of those stories, whether you're coming at it through science, natural science, history, sport, whatever, at the heart of it is human experience. And, what is more infinitely fascinating and moving to think that I'm actually sensing what this person in that 9,000 years ago rock shelter was doing. I'm sensing that because of what the scientists and Native communities have learned about that. And then in parallel, combining that knowledge. I wish if I could change one thing, I would never have called it Donna Lawrence Productions, because it overemphasizes one person's role. My role is key, but it's one role. I have a very specific job. And the writer has a specific job, and you've met all of our, some of our key writers and art direction. Every person has a very specific job. It is so much like a chamber orchestra. And so much like chamber orchestras as they originally existed, there was no conductor. So the idea of conducting a chamber orchestra is kind of a little bit more modern notion. But think about playing Bach chamber music without a conductor. It's every person is sort of sensing in all these different directions at once, that web of rhythm, music, harmonic progression, and everything that holds you together. That's what we do. We are a small chamber orchestra,
Oh, I can testify. I've seen you in action, and it's when you see a team that actually does not have to even speak in complete sentences to one another, and things are, Donna, will walk to this part of the field, and everything is set up, within an nth degree of where you would, if you had been standing there the whole time, it would have been here. And so I'm curious, as maybe sort of a final question, because I'm sure some people that will watch this, particularly young people who might be interested in working in this era, just what are your tips, suggestions, advice for people who find this way of storytelling very compelling, would like to work in this field that you've been such a pioneer in?
Sometimes I get this question: what's the best training? What should I major in? When I just think about our little group, okay, our little extended family, we live all over the country, you've got a psychology major, you've got a music major, you have a history major, you have a comparative religion major. Okay, you getting the picture? And some people are coming through communication arts, film school, but no matter what the role is, the thing that I think that runs through all of our kind of strengths and skills and talents is a deep, deep curiosity about the world around us, really wanting to know, how things work. Why did this happen? And then having spent some time studying, and this easily could be while in film school, I'm just saying, oh, it doesn't matter, but really trying to get a very broad, exposure and education in terms of history, sociology, geography, science. It all pours in. And I
Classic
know,
liberal arts training.
yeah, one way or another, and I don't want to say that, you just have to be a liberal arts music, student or not go to a film school. It's through whatever you're doing and your schooling and everything that you have that broad, a broad understanding of the world. And I think that some of the things that I may get off into dangerous territory here, but some of the things that we've been seeing happening that have become challenges to us culturally, society, health-wise, and everything, have to do with a narrowing of focus and a narrowing of focus in our education, in the way we relate to the world. I think makes us perhaps more vulnerable to things getting out of balance, whatever it is, but to be able to live together and work together harmoniously with all the great tension that democracy needs, but do it in a positive way. The more we can understand about a broader range of how the world around us works, the more we'll able to reach across all the divides to find solution and positive paths forward, whatever the particular issue at hand might be.
Amen to that. And that's what tells me we're in the same business. Absolutely. Well, Donna Lawrence, I treasure every moment we have together, and this has been a wonderful conversation. I know it could go on for many hours because we've done it before. Look forward to seeing you back here in Philadelphia again soon, visiting the museum. To those of you who are watching, please do include us in your travel plans and come here to visit us in Philadelphia. And,
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking these questions. I really appreciate that you're interested, and it's meant a lot. Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Well, thank you, Donna. This has been great. Absolutely wonderful. Be well, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Same here.